One.
Hey, everybody. You are watching and listening to the We Are Rizin podcast. This is your host, Andrew Benjamin. I am joined by my co-host, Jay Christian Gary from the mouth from the south. I'm going to call you Jay Christian Gary. How you doing?
Well, I curse more than Jerry. I curse more to that. What am I saying? I use more expletives than Jimmy Hart would hope to ever hear. And I basically say more things than he was ever allowed to say. But hey, how y'all doing? Anyways, enough about us. We're here to talk to our guest. And of course, this man has been waiting with zen-like patience just to get Rizin's attention. He is 34 years old. He stands 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighs in at 145.2 pounds, and represents the world famous Jackson Winklejohn MMA out of Albuquerque, but hails from Rio Rancho, New Mexico. He is 8-1 as a professional mixed martial artist, with most of his wins by way of finish, who just wrapped up a 3-fight stint with the LFA, despite not having a fight in almost 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome New Mexico's new favorite fighter, Andrew Tenneson. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Jay Christian. Doing good. Hey, Andrew Benjamin. Wonderful name.
Oh, thank you.
Great name you got there.
So my first question to you is, as a jiu-jitsu nut, I gotta ask, you have one of the few omoplatas, gogoplatas, finishes in MMA history. I think you and Shin Aoki probably are like most notable for finishing someone that way. How did you finish your opponent that way in LFA?
So, no joke, I remember talking to Boss Rutin before the fight, and because he was doing the HD net fights at the time. And I believe it wasn't Boss, it was Michael Chavello at that time, because they had switched them around. And I was saying, okay, first off, I hope or was it? No, it was Pat Miletich. I'm thinking about which LFA fight I was in.
The commentary crew was Michael Chavello and Pat Miletich, but you can continue.
Yeah. So I was talking to them before, and I'm like, man, I've been watching Shin Aoki since like 2008 when I just started nerding out online, watching YouTube. And I've just been drilling lots of the stuff he was doing. I had 10th Planet, Eddie Bravo books like Mastering the Twister, Mastering the Rubber Guard. And I just reached this position in that fight where it was just the best move to do at that time. And I had mount. And it was just a replay of Shin Aoki when he got a mount to gogoplata, essentially. I was really just channeling that. What was special about that fight was because my striking, my takedown, the horrible leg lock attempt, but it wasn't that bad. He was really good at defending them. So then I moved into mount. I landed some cool elbows and I got a gogoplata. What it was for me was a smorgasbord highlight reel of everything that I have learned in the past decade or so of fighting. And it felt really amazing. I felt like after a buffet, you like eat so much, you're like, I don't want to eat ever again. For me, it was, I don't want to fight really in the United States again. I don't really want to fight in a cage again. I want to go back home almost. I think of my younger self just nerding out over watching Sakuraba and Hideo Tokoro, Dream, K1 Heroes, Pride, of course. And I'm like, man, I want to give that Andrew a gift and have him be in this amazing country fighting in the top MMA promotion in Japan. And that's it. And that's what I want to do. And when I see who's fighting in the featherweight division in Rizin right now, I'm like, I could be there. I've done the work. I can make this exciting. If they're better than me, let them kill me there. Let me go out. Right? Let them break my arm, let me knock me out. Okay, cool. Good. That was my dream. But if they're not better than me, look out. Give me that belt after you let Kleber fight for it, because he's been earning it more than everyone.
So basically what you're saying, Tennyson, is that you are probably looking at the Yutaka Saito versus Juntaro Ushiku fight that just happened as of like 30-something hours ago. And you're probably thinking, you know what? If I were to ever come up to the Rizin Fighting Federation, I would make one of these fools tap out easily.
I would tap them out or knock them out. Or I would get tapped out or knocked out. I hate this decision thing. It's like you guys have all this opportunity to finish a fight, and it's almost like they waited to the last 30 seconds to fight before they really threw down. And when I see fighters that actually finish fights not getting the recognition that they deserve, it's just like, okay, whatever. You're pretty. You have nice haircut. You look good with shades in front of like a sports car. Good. Have you finished recently? Like, no. It's like, oh, okay. Do you fight with like the same kind of dedication and passion that Sakuraba would fight with, that Hideo Tokoro would fight with, that makes it where your fans love you, win or lose, to where you're really going to go in there and try the finish and try the entertain. And that's what MMA should be about, because we could fight in the gym, we could train. We're doing this for money to a certain degree, but we're really here to entertain fans and inspire people. And I want to show the Japanese fans that all their fighters in the past inspired me to make almost a pilgrimage to a place that is very special to me. And I want to give them back something as well. And so it's going to be a big thank you to like my past self, and a gift to my past self, but also a thank you to the whole entire nation. And basically that kind of like a Shudo fighting culture that I love, and that style of grappling and that style of fighting where you're like, I'm here to finish, and I'm here to make it spectacular, and I'm here to make it entertaining and be cared about no matter what the outcome is. Because in the UFC and in American MMA, it's like play it safe, get a whole bunch of decision wins, don't be entertaining, talk a whole bunch of crap, and be very negative. I don't want to do that. I want people to be like, wow, he came in the fight. Like I remember Kid Yamamoto doing jumping knees, flying knees across the cage. I remember Rumini Sato hitting this amazing armbar in a few seconds. It's like, yes, that's it. That's it. Hideo Tokoro going one night, 1 week notice against Royce Gracie.
Or Sakuraba taking a full 6 round, 15-minute beatdown against one of the Gracies, then getting beaten up by Igor Vovchanchyn.
And before that, he fought Guy Metzger, right?
Yeah.
The same night.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that? Let's have a dream featherweight tournament. Put me in there. Do they have enough fighters right now to fill a 6-man, 8-man tournament? I don't think they do.
So
I volunteered myself.
Andrew, I want so the featherweight division right now is probably actually Rizin's most stacked division in terms of international people. Well, actually just fighters in general. And actually, we do have a question from a listener, watcher. I can't pronounce their Twitter name because it's so many letters, but they want to know how you feel about the featherweight contenders like Kleber and Mikuru. I know that Mikuru is definitely somebody who you've had your eye on. So yeah, I want to give your thoughts.
I thought Asakura was like the guy for a while. I was like seeing his face everywhere on social media. They're like talking about it the most. He was their favorite dude, and I'm like, okay, he's great. A great southpaw fighter, great cross, great head kicks, but he's not. I don't know. He doesn't move enough. I'm like watching lower weight classes in one in the UFC. These guys are moving. They have footwork. I don't see his footwork. I see him in the corner of the ring and I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like,
he's also
why are you
just widely popular? He's just a widely popular guy. So even if he has no, like I think he's a good fighter, but he's certainly their most popular fighter. So there's a little bit of.
Is he their most popular fighter because how he fights?
Oh no, it's because of his YouTube channel.
That's all we need to know. But that Kleber, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He's an amazing fighter with an amazing story. He sounds like he has more of like, it's like, oh, well, I fell in love with jiu-jitsu. My family was dealing with poverty. I worked construction jobs to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's finishing people. And he's not Chip? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's like, yeah, let's put them all in a tournament. Let's test it. Because tournaments are magical because even the best fighter doesn't always win the tournament. Sometimes it's the guy who has the lucky break. Man, he had a easier fight than this guy that maybe like had a war before. right? And so magical things happens. Then you can have cool rematches. It's just spectacular. And it's like, I just want to see that opportunity for chance, that opportunity for gutsy performances, and just people willing to put it on the line and know that their fans will love them if they do, rather than you're only as good as your last fight. And no more like double rematches against like this guy and that guy when they both offer two boring fights, and it's like, okay,
You brought up a good
let's get the
point though about the
finisher.
entertainment factor, and that's something that's much different about Japanese MMA and American MMA. And I think you said it best that it's you're as good as your last fight. I know the UFC kind of has a policy, or at least had a policy: 3 losses, you're gone. But in Japanese MMA, you can have 10 losses, but if you're fighting with every ounce of strength and breath that you have, you will be welcome back no matter what. And I'm just curious to know, as an MMA fighter, who has, fought in America, probably your coaches, Jackson Wigglejohn, no less, instilled, how much winning is important. Just want to know what your thoughts are on that different
I
dichotomy.
I'm a finisher. The one fight I didn't finish, I apologized. Like, I'm sorry. I can't. I
That
let
was
my knees were hurting for weeks from
and
hitting
that
his head.
a now
I'm sorry.
and I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, even though it's kind of my thing, but that was against now UFC contender Corey Sandhagen, right?
That's the one loss. My one decision win. I tried the knee so many times. I tried to finish Sandhagen a million times in that fight. You could see how hard he is to finish, right? And
Yeah.
I cut too much for that fight. But I lost to one of the great of all time in my mind. And I lost by decision to one of the greats of all time in multiple weight classes. And it's like, okay, I lost that decision and I won one under decision. But other than that, I finished. And I always aim for the finish until the very last second versus playing it safe and just try to win, just try to take him down and control him. I'm gonna hold him against the ropes and be stood up by the ref. To be stood up by the ref is a disgusting feeling because they only stand you up when you're not working. You're not working. These guys aren't working in there. They're not working. Andrew Benjamin, they're not working. Jay Christian, I'm gonna work. I get
And
paid to work.
In Rizin, you see refs will scream action like 2 or 3 times, and if nothing's happening, they immediately put them. It's like almost like boxing. It's more like boxing how they approach it. I've seen things you like UFC, Bellator, LFA, where the people are just, or the fighters are just laying on each other, and they're just the referee's just not doing anything, not doing it. He could be out the coffee, but that's one of the things that I do like about Japanese MMA is that the referees demand action. You don't give action, you get penalized. You get the yellow card. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
You remember old Pancrest rules
Yes.
where you could you only had so many seconds or so, like on the ground in some divisions. And I know women's MMA in Japan, which has come a long way, thank goodness. They in lots of their original you had the deep women's division, they would have a 30-second. At Smack Girl, they had 30-second clock. That's all you had on the ground, no matter how much action there was. And you're like, wow, okay, so you had this thing where you had to get subbed 5 times, but someone could grab the ropes. You had this other system where they only had 30 seconds to work. You're like, yeah, because I'm gonna get this sub quick submissions from any position, submission before position, that kind of catch wrestling style. I love it, and it's like, it's not the most efficient or effective when it comes to winning an American decision. And then, especially if you're like, oh, I'll lose my job if I don't win this boring fight, right? It's like, rather than make it exciting. But I'd rather go out exciting. I'd rather go out entertaining people, because why else am I doing it? Because I could make money. I could go and I already got a college degree. I go and be a lawyer. Okay. I could do a lot of different things. I could just coach. I'm done fighting. Okay, cool. I'm just coaching now. But why would I do that when I could go on adventures and share something with the world? I remember Genki Sudo, and he had the we are all one flag. And I'm like, that's what it's about. It's about martial arts being a unifying force instead of a negative one. not being one that you have like a whole bunch of nationalism necessary tied to it, especially toxic nationalism, but one like in Chechnya, for example.
Mm.
But you have like people who don't even speak the same language, who don't look the same, being able to be each other's mountains. And when you climb a mountain, you love that mountain because it's there. You wouldn't want it not to be there. So when after that fight, after that battle, and you guys have bled together, fought together, all the tears that you shed in the back or in the front, yes, that's what this sport's about. And I just want to give that to Japan. And their fighters, I'm ready to make them exciting if they don't want to be.
Oh, Andrew,
That's
so
the thing.
you
If they want to play it safe, they're with the wrong person.
you got my brain wheels going. I gotta ask. I don't know if you remember a few years ago at the Golden Globes, Meryl Streep. If you remember this, so she
Yeah.
said mixed martial arts is not an art. I'm curious to know
Oh
what
no.
after that whole thing, as you just told me, what do you think about what she said and just her kind of
The most important thing with most things, most art forms, most technologies, is that they're morally neutral. And it's what we do with them that determines their moral worth. So I could have films that could be absolutely beautiful, wonderful, inspirational, but I have films that are trash, and I could have films that are propaganda for what's I consider basically evil, right? Even if the films are done well, you have like Birth of a Nation, the one from like D.W. Griffiths, one of the best films ever made, but also one of the most evil films ever made. You could have MMA do the same thing. It could just support like brainless violence, where you have a whole bunch of drunk fans who just knock them out, whatever.
just
Or you could
bleed.
have actual martial artists go at it, entertainers go at it, artists go at it, and try to show creation. I think Cub Swanson said it best. He says, "I'm out there to paint a painting of beautiful destruction," and I'm like, "Yes, that's what I want to do," and I want to do that in a ring in Japan, to give back and go full circle essentially on a journey that people like Sakuraba and Megumi Fuji started me on YouTube videos.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what I'd say to anybody that says that video games are not an art, or that martial arts is not an art, that MMA is not important. It's what we do with what we have that makes it special. And I want to make Rizin more special.
You know what? That would be cool. We wouldn't mind seeing you make Rizin more special. I mean, because in a way, when it comes down to some of these fighters to throw a little New Mexico logic at you, it's like basically going to Area 51, even though Area 51 in New Mexico and Nevada.
That's in the Groom Lake, right? We're Roswell.
Yeah,
We have the crash landing cover
Roswell, New
ups.
Mexico. I remember Roswell.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's like Roswell. Basically, it's like the aliens touching down in Roswell. But when it comes down to some of these fights, it's like the aliens touching the ground. They're wondering what the hell is going on. But
It's it,
still,
it's
though,
it's
but
when there's a fight where it's like, okay, there's 30 seconds left. Let me now impress the judge. That I'm like, okay, like let's have the highlight be like there. You shouldn't be able to make a minute-long highlight reel of your fight unless it
mhm,
lasts a minute. You
exactly.
want your fight to have like you're like, let's show that knockdown again from 5 angles because that was amazing. Let's show that submission. Like you want to be a human highlight reel, win or lose. You want to bring it.
Hmm.
And I just don't understand. Maybe they need finishing bonuses or something. Like just like the to take the fear out of it. Because it's already a scary thing and you're already going to get hurt. And chances are you're going to get hurt in the gym more than you're going to get hurt in the fight.
That
You
you
might
are.
slip it. You might slip and get hit by a bus. It's like life is dangerous, but we're choosing to do this. So let's do it well and to the best of our abilities and really try to uh, inspire people, especially in a world that needs more inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Going back.
And
Oh, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
you know what? I was basically thinking about that question you asked when it came down to, fight fans and toxic fan bases. outside of the fucking stupidity that's happening over in Russia with those Chechnyans and that fucking brainwashed asshole Kadyrov, and yes, I am not gonna confine myself to saying that Kadyrov is an asshole, but when it comes down to like certain fan bases, like the Brazilians with the Uva More chants, and basically everybody, especially here in the States, I mean, I just hate it when fans see two foreign born competitors in the ring, and all of a sudden they start chanting USA, USA, all that shit. But still, the point of the matter is, when it comes down to fan bases, do you think that we, the Western fan base, can learn a hell of a lot from Japan as far as how to respect the sport instead of just trash it whenever they see something wrong with it?
We can, we all, I think all fan bases have their toxic side and their positive side. I think American fans expecting more from their fighters to be more entertaining nowadays should be countered with the Japanese fans being appreciative of more technical things. Like, let's clap when someone passes from half the side, right? But also you do have matchups of especially women's MMA. You have the Beauty and the Beast matchups, which are horrible. You have matchups with foreigners just so you can beat the foreigner. You have going back to professional wrestling in Japanese history. I remember this whole idea of like post World War II, you're like, okay, let's have professional wrestling be a way that we can rebuild a kind of sense of national ego. And so you have the foreign wrestler then be that stand-in for that sense of powerlessness that may be happening. But when I see Hideo Tokoro and what they're advertising him as is this guy that is being a janitor, so that he trains in ZST, fights in ZST after doing janitorial work, I see someone whose story is universal. And I attach to that more than I attach to where he's from. And I think that is probably the key aspect of why we should appreciate martial arts, as especially for Japan and its basis in catch wrestling being brought over by American soldiers and Carl Gotch specifically. Then you also have the Gracies and what they got from Japan and then brought back. And this is a worldwide sport with worldwide roots, and it doesn't just belong to one people. And why would you cheer for just one people over the other? And it's just, I don't know. I don't want that. I want the Japanese to be cheering for me the same way American fans would. And I don't want to be cheering for an American fighter over a Japanese fighter just because of some idea of borders or blood. That doesn't make any sense to me, because we're all human beings at the end.
Understood, because if you basically cheering for somebody just because of their nationality, not knowing how bad they suck compared to the rest of the world, it's like you're basically cheering for mediocrity.
It could be that too. It could also be this idea of like, you need to hurt someone else to feel good. I remember in the Olympics, there was a guy that he was training to swim in a hotel swimming pool that wasn't even like full length. And he couldn't even finish. He barely finished the swimming event in the Olympics because he was from a poor country, didn't have a swim program. But that's inspirational to me. Like, he's doing the best he can representing his country, and his country should be just as proud of him for finishing as much as they would be proud of someone for winning the gold. And I think that kind of inspiration at a national level is very positive versus the kind of negative is like, well, we have to bring in people to beat, or we don't want to fight overseas because it's too hard, right? It's like, no, we do things not because they're easy, because they're hard, right? Kind of quoting Kennedy there.
Right.
So I love the idea of going over. Oh, sorry about that.
My bad. But basically, it's like when it comes down to today's crisis, when it comes down to immigrants wanting to come from all over the world, might I add, wanting to come into this country just to live a better life. You don't want to block off people coming in from Latin America, especially from Mexico, because they feel like they're going to take my job when they really just have a better life.
The big key aspect of why I think it's Souza. He fights at 155 in Rizin, right?
Yeah, he's the
He
lightweight champ.
he's he yeah, he's the lightweight champion. He's Japanese Brazilian or Brazilian Japanese.
Mhm.
That connection is a very beautiful connection that they should embrace fully, rather than him like, does he really count? And then with all his like all the controversies around him with like uh lotioning up and greasing down, you have Sexyama, right? You have Yushiro Akiyama,
Oh
and
my
his
God.
status as a Korean Japanese person. It's like, okay, he's third generation, but does he count as Japanese, even though he's been born here and his family was born here? It's like, oh, but his father's father wasn't. And so, okay, but he could still inspire you with his amazing techniques and inspire you with his confidence and inspire you with his exciting style. Him versus Melvin Manhoff was like,
Mm.
yes, right? In a gi even, you know?
And that was in
So
Heroes, mind you. That fight was in Heroes, if you remember.
so that's what we want. We want heroes.
Yes. But still, though, I get what you mean. We need great stories, regardless of, how we're going to
Man,
get, regardless of where these people are from. Not just because,
there we
I'm
go.
American and I represent freedom and liberty and justice and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's like,
Andrew, I'll ask in that case because yeah, like you said, well, like Chris said, Ryzen loves stories. They love to know about the fighter. Tell us what is your story about your martial arts journey and why Ryzen why should Ryzen be interested in that story?
I'm I'm uh I'm almost an otaku. I wouldn't say I'm that far, but there's so many like Japanese cultural properties that have inspired me, from anime to kaiju films to martial arts films to MMA promotions, but also just the idea that I was a chubby kid. I was over 100 kilograms when I was in high school. I joined the army. I started going to college and I started training martial arts when I was 22 or something. Like I'm not like a kid that's been doing it since he was 5. And it just became my life. And I coach a lot of people and I work with a lot of young fighters, and I really just want to show the world what kind of a normal person could do and what we all can do if we just have a kind of dream for it. And that dream isn't necessarily about success or money, but about being vulnerable. And I want to be vulnerable and have an adventure. And so I want Rise in the Sea that they can show that to lots of people that may be thinking, well, do I want to start this new hobby? But what if I'm not the best at it? Oh, do I want to like go and move to a new city? Maybe, I don't know. But no, what if you can? Because that one guy from America watched YouTube and then 10 years or 12 years later finally made it to where he wanted to be. And he was able to give back just a little bit. Let that that's a mate that's a good story in my mind. And again, whoever I fight in Japan, they're going to have an amazing fight for them. It's going to be a good highlight for me. It's going to be a good highlight for them because it's not going to go to a decision. It's not. And if it does, we're both going to the hospital. I'm ready to go. Right. I'm like, let the flights delay the flights because I might be in there for a while. And I just want to give that to people. And so what Rise is looking at is someone who is going to bring an exciting fight, not be disrespectful, care about the fans, and appreciate and honor whoever their opponent is, and really help them. Just, I'm going to give you the gift of fighting me because you're giving me the gift of fighting you. And I really want to drive that home to where I want to fight someone and then have a brother afterwards, whoever it is, even if I think they're kind of dorky with their sunglasses and sports cars.
right.
I'm calling out.
But, but first of all, man, since you mentioned it, obviously, thank you for your service since you were a member of the United States military. And second of all, when it comes down to the fact that you once weighed in at 200 pounds, I know it's probably not really that easy to lug around 200 pounds when you're 5'8", but I bet that weight loss process was probably crazy. Well, actually, no,
It was
220 pounds because you said 100 kilos, but still, it was not easy to lug around the same weight as an NFL running back.
yeah, at 17, I was probably 217 at my most, maybe 220. And I joined the army and I got down to like 180 and I started training martial arts and I got down to 160. And that's kind of where I float around, and then I cut down to featherweight to fight. I'm a clean fighter as well. That's very important to me. I don't use performance enhancing drugs. I don't misbehave. I don't try to, and when I say misbehave, I mean actually hurt people and act criminally. I feel like that's a horrible thing. I feel like if I did that, I shouldn't be a martial artist anymore. I kind of lose that moral right. So I wanna be a good example for kids too. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I'm looking up to this guy. Okay, he got arrested for doing something horrible. Oh, this guy, he hit somebody that was weaker than him because he could. That's gonna be me. It's like, no, I don't want to be that person. So I like the idea of being in the underdog. I like the idea of fighting for everyone, in fighting for the Japanese fans, even though I'm not a Japanese national. I want to fight for them, and I want them to feel that I'm fighting for them, and that I'm risking my life, because people can die in MMA, and if they don't die then, they die later, and you see that a lot. So with older MMA fighters specifically. So I'm putting my health on the line for fans, and I'm putting my life and my health on the line for this entertainment spectacle that I think has more meaning than just entertainment.
It's interesting that you brought up. I'm sorry to interrupt, Andrew. But
no, go ahead. Yeah, I ramble. You interrupt me. I'll keep going.
You brought up, respect, towards your opponent, and all that, and now, that you don't insult your opponent. I'm just, and I have, it's funny that we talked about Shin Aoki, and I remember, you probably remember Aoki Hirota, where he snapped his arm and gave him the finger.
Yes.
And then was giving the entire audience a finger. So it's not entirely all respect over there. There are some,
it's not. It's not.
And even Mikuru, who you have your eyes on, he's kind of known as being I don't want to say a dick, but like, basically. Yeah, he kind of talks trash to his opponents. If he thinks you're beneath you, he will say it publicly. He has no problem like saying that. Though it's funny, in the end, all the people that he fights and he beats wind up training with him anyway. So who knows if it's a gimmick or whatever it is.
I would love to train with Japanese fighters. That would be another dream come true. I coached mixed martial arts in Qingdao, China for 7 months, which is a pretty amazing adventure. So dealing with a complete different culture, language barriers, I'm able to do that.
It's funny though that there's really not a lot of language barrier when it comes to Japanese. I mean, ashi leg,
Yeah,
I think arm bar. I don't think they use. Basically, there's really no language barrier when it comes to martial arts. Yeah, maybe some little minor things, but for the most part, you know what you say choke in Japanese, they know what you're saying in English.
Yep. Yeah. So it's I remember watching lots of like Shinyaoki, we're talking about him. Not only did I watch lots of his fights, I watched lots of his instructionals. So it's like starts off with Sugiwa, and then they go doo-doo-doo, and they're explaining the whole thing, and you're like, okay, I do not understand anything he's saying, but the body language comes across. So in my mind, martial arts is its own language, and I feel like that I could teach a lot to Japanese fighters, just because I've been given so much knowledge by Coach Greg Jackson and Coach Mike Winklejohn, Joey Villasenor. We've had so many amazing fighters there, and I've trained with so many people from Bellator and the UFC, that it's just, if I go over there, I would hopefully get to work with some Japanese teams, some Japanese gyms. That would be another way that I would want to gift Japan back for inspiring me to get into the sport in the first place. So if they would not only have an opponent for someone, but they'd also have a training partner for plenty of other people, which gives them an interesting look, especially if they want to think about fighting overseas, because it's different timing, different styles that they just might not get the looks of. And I'm just a great training partner. I'm one of the best training partners in the world, I think. I helped a lot of people to a lot of victories, getting beat up by a lot of good people. But the idea is like, no, I push them in the gym. They push me. We both get better. And at the end of the day, I love to give that to Japanese fans, and I'm going to show them what Jackson Wink MMA is about too.
I do know that when a lot of the American fighters go over, particularly this what just happened at Rizin 35, a lot of them train at Crazy B because Crazy B is run by
Yes.
Miyu Yamamoto. She speaks fluent English, so she, most of the time that unless you're fighting a fighter from there, they welcome American fighters to train there as well. I don't know. You could definitely listen. Crazy B is having a lot of issues, not getting a lot of W's in the winning column. Perhaps you could definitely contribute something to Crazy B that could change that potentially.
And there's so many amazing gyms in Japan. Like Abeane Combat Club, just because of Megumi Fuji, I'm like, oh, I'm nerding out. Like I want to go there. I remember I've trained on and off with Celine Haga for 10 years now, almost. It feels like a while, maybe 6. And she
Celine
trained there
Haga,
originally.
And Celine Haga, if you probably remember, spent most of her career in Japan.
Fighting in jewels, which we'll talk about another time. And they're 2 rounds, and they're big puppy gloves, and they're standing 8 counts. But I love what Rizin's doing with women's MMA now in Japan. It's very beneficial, and it's just great to see. And so I'm excited to see more them even expanding their weight classes for women. So, and then I know women here, I know men here that want to go over there and fight too. They'd love to. We could send our whole team there. Our whole team, Team Jackson Wink could fight Team Rizin, and it'd be exciting. It would be we'd get a good percentage of wins there, right? So, there's just so many opportunities, and I just want to help.
To be honest, Mr. Tenneson, it would definitely be exciting for the folks of Jackson Winklejohn to go over to Rizin and manage to get a bunch of wins, manage to snap up enough wins, they'd be like the Golden State Warriors of MMA.
I think we'd be like the Harlem Globetrotters of MMA if we did that.
Harlem Globetrotters. Oh God.
But
we're globetrotting now.
The only reason why I say that is because of the fact that, unlike unified rules in the States where you can't knee somebody in the head, no 12-6 elbows, no soccer kicks, none of the epic superior rule set stuff that's going on in Rizin, you can actually get away with all the fun the law allows. And by the law, I mean in the Rizin rule set.
And it would be exciting. And I've watched, and we have experience fighting under those rule sets because we've had fighters that were in Pride, right? So it's not like it's not like something that we're not able to adjust to. We actually would enjoy it. It's just a new puzzle for us to solve, because that's basically how especially Coach Greg works, is that this is just really an intellectual exercise for him as much as a physical one. So, if I went over, they'd already have a crew that could go over, and that crew could all be talked to by one. They'd be all in the same place, and they'd all take the same planes, and they'd all be ready. And that'd be a super dream come true. But yeah, I just would really love to fight Asakura. That's really who I'm just like, I want to fight that guy so bad. But the current champ, the gentleman that he fought twice, Saito, I believe. I'd like the
current champ. He just lost this past week.
Saito lost twice to Ushiku, right?
Yeah.
And so the first one was that cut TKO, and then the second one's decision just recently. Either one of those gentlemen would be an amazing fight. The most difficult one would be the Brazilian finisher that we were talking about.
Kleber Koike.
Yes, he's scary good in one area, and that's he'll pull guard, he'll get those triangle chokes, Klanger will, and that is very an interesting proposition. But I'm surprised that he's not champ right now because he's been finishing. So we'll see. But I'm willing to fight anybody that they have in their main roster. Even if
You know
someone
what?
who's not in their main roster, put me on an undercard. I'll fight somebody.
Come to think of it, would you basically say the same for somebody like Vugar Karamov?
Is he the one from Azerbaijan?
Yep. Same
Yes.
one.
Not really. Not really. It's kind of like there's one you could be dominant in one area so much that like people run the trouble shutting you down. And you're so good at jujitsu, for instance. I think of it as like the Miguel Torres style back in the WEC. He'd had amazing jujitsu and he'd be able to open up loose with his hands. It was also the old shooter box style. They had amazing jujitsu, so they could open up loose on their Muay Thai. And so even if their wrestling wasn't good, it's like, well, they're just going to knock you out. So you have to take them down. Oh no, now you're on the ground with them. That kind of like trouble is more interesting than anyone who's just a heavy puncher or a really good wrestler, especially with the way they're standing up in Rizin right now. If you're able to hold enough, and if he's not able to pass my guard, he'd get hurt. He'd be hurt if he was in my guard. I think everyone would. I think I have a really good ground game, and I think my stand-up game has gotten a lot better too. I feel like in the corner of the ring, I'd be able to show them things that they are not used to, because I feel like they don't know what it's like to work against a wall consistently. So when they're against that corner sty, it's like I don't know, they just don't know how to deal with it. And I'm like, that's better than a cage wall to me. That's the easiest takedown I've ever seen. And the wall work is completely different than stand up clinch in the open and groundwork. It's some kind of hybrid in between the two. And I feel like there's just a technical advantage that I have there. And so whether they're from, and I don't even want to fight someone from Azerbaijan, to tell you the truth. I want to fight, or someone from Brazil. I want to fight someone from Japan. That's what I want the most. I want to fight for Japanese fans against a Japanese fighter
You
and
know
show
what?
them what I got.
Come to think of it, I think an ideal first fight for somebody like you would probably be against somebody along the lines of Satoshi Dominator Yamasu, the former deep champion. Would you
That'd
probably?
be wonderful.
Yeah, that
The thing is,
disqualifies me from asking.
no, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I said, that's amazing. Because it's the idea is that you have someone who's working their way up into Rizin from deep is a great person for me to meet, for us to both work our way into the higher levels of the division.
We have a question from our buddy J Wolf, Chris, for you, Andrew.
Oh yeah, he basically asked, would you planning on going into Rizin, have you studied anything about the superior rule set, the 12-6 elbows, the soccer kicks, the knees to the head of a grounded opponent, all those beautiful things?
I've always been studying it, because I started there mentally and emotionally. I was like, oh, I can't do that. Right? Oh man, but I like that move. Man, but I'm on my back. I want to up kick him even though he's on his knees, right? Oh, I can't do that. Okay. So for me, it's almost like the rules are more of a limitation, that it's like I have to remember to not do it. I'm like, okay, I got to remember not to elbow him like this. I got to remember not to knee him in the head like this. I got to remember not to soccer kick him like this. But also, I've been studying how Shogun Hua was able to stomp and ground kick people. And he did seminars on that. So it's not just like, oh, you just do it. No, there's actual training and actual positions that change. North-south is a completely different position. I remember Ricardo Arona had Sakuraba in that front headlock and he was just stuck. And I remember Sakuraba's orbital bone being broken there. And so it's like, okay, what is a wrestling shot like now compared to what it could be otherwise? Because they could just knee me in the head, even though I'm on the ground. If I go to my back, they could stomp me. And I love that. I love that, because that's kind of how, especially with Greg Jackson's system, it's actually a street fighting system first, then MMA system second. And so for me, rule sets are just, okay, what can I do, what I can't do? If they said I could headbutt, I'd headbutt. And they'd be like, are you studying for that? I'm like, yes. What do you think I've been doing? Like, I've been studying. It's like they gave me a stick. I'm like, okay, let's go. because that's what I've been training with someone who's not just sport centric. So a lot non-limited rule set I've been ready for my whole life, that I've been as a martial artist, because I was watching those unlimited rule sets or near unlimited rule sets. Now they're saying in Pride you couldn't even elbow, right? So now I can throw elbows. I've been throwing elbows longer than they have in Japan, right? On paper. So it's like, are they ready for me? That's what they gotta ask themselves. Are they ready for me? Are they ready for me bringing my understanding of both rule sets to them? And that's what I'm excited about.
I also I'm curious to know as well, as Rizin, not just MMA promotion, they've done grappling before, and now they're really doing kickboxing. I'm just curious to know, let's just say if Rizin filled up like all MMA stuff for like a card, but they came to you for like a kickboxing match. Would that be something you might be interested in trying?
I would do a grappling match, and yes, I'd probably do a kickboxing match. I would do both. I would do both, or mixed rules. We could go grappling first, kickboxing second, MMA third. Let's go. It's an adventure for me, right? Definitely I'm a stronger grappler. You can look at like my record. It's like, okay, lots of submission wins. But I'm a mixed martial arts grappler. So for me, it's like, I'm not reverse De La Hiva, always inverting. It's like, no, I'm going to hit you. So that's my main thing. And now it's like, not only that, I will stomp you or knee you in the face. So that's my primary focus, is mixed martial arts style grappling. What works in a fight where someone can hit you and hurt you, not what works when they can't touch you. But I've definitely trained with people who have been getting ready for EBI style competitions, grappling style competitions. I really like the idea of having limited ground time for 30 seconds, and more like a judo match. I also like combat sambo rules. So it's just a lot of different things are available, and I'm definitely willing to go and perform. I remember, I think his name was Lopez or something, but I remember him fighting in like K1, and he was an MMA fighter, and he really brought it. And they were a little surprised that he was doing so well against one of their Japanese kickboxers. But I have kickboxers at our gym too.
I think when it came down to that Lopez guy, he was, was it Francisco Kiko Lopez or something?
Yeah. And he did really well.
Same guy. He was the same guy who was the last win of the late great Kid Yamamoto.
Yes, I believe you're right. And he was just he brought, I think it was Hirota or something. That it was something in one of those K1 Max fights that there's this random MMA fighter was in, and he just did a really good job. I remember Andre Dita was fighting in K1 as well, and he had Muay Thai experience, but it wasn't the same. He was a mixed martial artist. So there was a lot of mixed martial artists that will then fight in kickboxing styles. And of course you have Aoki losing to in that mixed rules match when he got kneed right at the end, right at the beginning, at the beginning of the MMA version.
It was Jie Natsu Nakashima, the cosplay fighter.
Yes, Nakashima, who'd come out with like the anime schoolgirl outfit, right?
Exactly.
Which will, and it will be so. I will 100% dress up as an anime character. I can only guarantee you, but it's a surprise. Who?
Well, hey, you would be no different than what Spike Carlisle did over the weekend.
I mean, how could you not go out dressed as an anime character?
I was actually going to ask you that, Andrew, because one of the most important aspects of the Japanese martial arts has always been the entrance, the song, the atmosphere. And one of the, it's happening less now. Bellator, they do it for Alima McFarland whenever she's in Hawaii. UFC, if it's Connor or whoever, they get a grand entrance. But I'm curious to know. So you kind of answered my question, but how much of the entrance would be important to you? Is that your time to get in the mode? Is that your time to click it on or whatever?
The thing is, in so many fights, like I couldn't use my entrance song, which was Destiny by Hitomi Shimatami, who was of the lounge style singing of Japanese music, and then she went more the pop. And that was my walk-in song, and the lyrics of that song translated, it was just so beautiful to me. I love that song. That song's about finding your way through the
I think the reason why you weren't able to walk out to that song was because when LFA was just transitioning over from HDNet to Access TV to the UFC Fight Pass, they were still trying to weed out all the copyrighted music.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, most of the promotions, anything that was ever aired could basically, you couldn't have copyrighted music on. So for my most recent fights, I couldn't come out to the Japanese pop song from 2007 that I've been wanting to come out to since I was an amateur, right?
Mm.
So there I'd be coming out to this song that has a near and dear place to my heart. The lyrics, I think, would speak to lots of the Japanese fans automatically because they'd be seeing like how I see this as me overcoming adversity in my life, whether it's mental health or whether it's injuries in the gym, whatever it is. This is me fighting for them, fighting for all of us to try and show them what someone can do when they're motivated and inspired and try to hopefully motivate and inspire other people. So it's definitely I'm definitely the result of a huge cultural exchange. My mother's English, my father's African American. My favorite fighters have always been Japanese fighters. It's like I'm from New Mexico, right? Which is where we have a great mixed match of cultures. My wife is Vietnamese American. It's like this is me living a very cosmopolitan existence. And I want to go to Japan and show them that, hey, here's something that you helped make. You threw seeds into the wind with your MMA culture, and it's come back. And I'm going to show you what you did. And I want to make you proud no matter what. And that's what I really want to give the Rizin fans. And if that means beating up Asakura in front of his friends, okay. But I'll love him afterwards, 100%, because he's my mountain then. And I want him to be there to climb, and I want to be his mountain so he can climb and we can both challenge ourselves and give each other that gift. And I mean, what else can you want? An entertaining fighter coming out with some dorky anime song and dressed up as an anime character from the 80s. And yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great. I can't think of another fighter. They just bring it. It's like some boring guy that like talks crap and doesn't finish. Okay.
I also want to ask as well, at Jackson Winklejohn, I'm guessing they probably train most of their fighters just for the cage. I'm curious to know the ring. Probably something you've always wanted to do as well. The ring just has more history behind it.
It has.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's technically different. Has more history behind it. It's a huge challenge and again just an intellectual just joy of mine. I want to solve this puzzle. How are my takedowns now? What's my wall work now? How much is that corner as important as the rest of the ropes? I can bounce off of it. How much does it give? What happens if I'm in a sub and I'm real close to it, but now the rope's kind of in the way of my head? That's exciting to me. And I feel like being in there, I feel like I'm kind of a professional wrestler. Like, I mean, Sakura was my favorite fighter. It's like, that's what he did first. Okay. So being in a roped ring, it's great. And I'd fight in a cage in Rizin too, but because I know they do those sometimes, especially for their some of the recent smaller cards, I believe. They had like some like they had a new sponsor and it seemed like the shows were a little smaller versus a New Year's Eve show, which is always in rings. And so that's the setting of the cage versus the ring isn't that important to me. It's something that I adjust to because I'm a martial artist and you adjust to terrain. And I think about just the art of war. And it's like, was it like fighting in the mountains? What is it like fighting in the forest? What is it like fighting in the fields? And that's all it is. It's like you adjust.
I'm also curious to know. I don't think any other Jackson Winklejohn fighters have fought for Rizin. I'm correct.
Only partially Patchy Mix. Who
I forgot. He became the. Yeah, I forgot that
he moved over right before or right after to Las Vegas. But I was training with him for like a year or two.
It was right 14 when I think he knocked out one of the top contenders.
No, he choked out a guy that had never been submitted before. Yeah. And I was so proud of him and so happy that I could be his grappling dummy at some point. You know, I was like, oh, that's the guy that choked me. Good.
I totally forgot that. Yeah, I forgot because I thought Patchy Mix was still at that time. I thought he was still training in Albany, where the fuck he was from.
I
Upstate New
think
York.
because he moved and trained with us for a long time, and I learned so much from him. And I'm just so blessed. He's still like, I still consider him like a martial arts brother because he was just so helpful to me and developing me and helping me be a better coach and a better fighter. And then he got to go as part of Bellator's contingent to go and fight in Rizin. And I was like, that's my dream. Like, oh, why do they get to go? But I was like, I don't have to fight for Bellator now and then maybe get to go. See, it's always like, I'm like, I just want to go there.
Well,
I want to be a Rizin fighter. I don't want to represent Bellator in Rizin. I want to represent Rizin in Rizin.
But
You
isn't that,
know?
well, as a fighter, doesn't that also make you? What do you think about that? That Rizin will work with other promotions like Bellator or
I
like
love it.
Pancrase or Deep. What do you think about that as a fighter? Where, let's be honest, number one company in the world won't work with anybody anymore, and it's kind of, I think, a detriment to not only fighters. It's kind of closes off. I think fighters are a lot more interested when this cross promotion.
I believe we're all stronger together. We're more than the sum of our parts. So you create a lot of synergy with different organizations. If an organization even gets like, if they have 10 fights and they lose all 10 to another promotion, good, right? They're going to be like, what do we need? How do we then help our gyms? How do we help our fighters compete at this level? Instead of looking at it as have a scarcity mindset. Oh, we lost, right? But we didn't. But well, no, you learned. Good. It's okay. Because that's what we need to be vulnerable to grow. So if you're not willing to work with other gyms, if you're not willing to work with other martial artists, if you're not willing to work in different disciplines, you're like, oh, I'm just a wrestler, or I'm just a striker. It's like, no, you're just limiting yourself then. So I want to have lots of friends and I want to have lots of competitors and I want to be adventuring around the world. And I want to be able to give that to Japanese fighters that I'm like, hey, let me fight you guys and let me train with you guys because I'm not your enemy. And that's just super important to me. At the core of it, it's like, you're my opponent. You're not my enemy. And you're only going to be my opponent for that night. And then we're friends again. And so, yeah, I just like, yeah, cross training and cross promotions. It's great. Do it all the time. I don't know why we're so limited in our world. I don't want one. I want one in Rizin. That'd be amazing.
It's ego. It's just egos. That's what it all comes down to. Egos, pride, haha.
Ego, pride, sadistic happenings behind the scenes, things like that.
Yeah,
And
just like, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
It comes from a scarcity mindset, as I said. They think that they lose something if something doesn't go well. But it's again the Japanese fighter that's loved by their fans, even if they lose. Then what kind of fighter do they then get? What kind of fighter do they then become? They become an amazing, entertaining, adventurous fighter who's willing to fight, people that may not be the best matchups for them, but they end up making a mark on someone else's heart, basically, that they wouldn't have otherwise. People will forget lots of these great fighters that have undefeated records right now, even if they are better on paper. But I'll remember people that have 20 fights and may have only won half of them because they really brought it. And they actually gave something back to the sport instead of just thinking about it like the sport giving them something, or the sport just being a sport rather than an art and a way to inspire people.
Jay Krish, I'm going to throw it to you for the last set of questions.
You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and limit myself down to 2. First of all, when it comes down to, obviously, if you were not fighting in mixed martial arts, you would definitely be a way more different person compared to what you were back when you were 14 years old. But when it comes down to, being a martial artist, do you think that if you would have taken a different path, like if you would have, stayed being heavy, 5'8", 220 pounds, do you think that it would have probably been a while before you would have been a, productive member of society?
Productive member of society is a very loaded term, but
No,
I
sorry.
will say, I will say that that when it comes to health, physical health, and mental health, that mixed martial arts has definitely been one of the things that you could say probably saved my life. That without martial arts, I might not be here right now. And I want people to know that it's okay that you're battling depression, that you're battling issues with weight and health, that there's a lot of amazing, interesting, and wonderful things that are waiting out there for you. And in the end, martial arts is probably one of my students, she says, martial arts is the least interesting thing about you. And so it's not about performance and it's not about being productive. It's about you making it special. When someone watches me fight, I want them to say, oh, it's an Andrew Tenneson fight, not just, oh, there's a fight on. Okay, right? I don't care who's fighting for the belt. I don't care that someone's fighting for the belt. I care who's fighting for the belt because I care about that fighter. That fighter makes it important. And I want people to realize that in their life, what makes their life important is them, not the life that they're just living. And so when they realize that they are worthy innately without having to do anything, then they can give themselves the gift of following their dreams, of taking care of themselves better, instead of using that as like, okay, I do A, B, and C, and now I'm worthwhile. No, I'm worthwhile, so I will do A, B, and C. I want them to flip the equation on the directional equation the other way. And I want them to realize that martial arts is just one way that I've done that. And maybe it's going to be a different kind of dream for them. But we all have greater callings than just how we physically look or where we're from or how much money we have. It's what really inspires us and makes us feel like we're giving our hearts to something. And that's what I want to show people in the ring or the cage. And I want to do it in Japan for Rizin, so people can rise up.
Of course. Of course. And another question I want to get off my chest before we go ahead and call it in. I see Andrew is basically dormant at the moment, but still, Benjamin is dormant at the moment, but still, Tennyson, when it comes down to, and you can pretty much get away in New Mexico, specifically in Albuquerque, for being a mixed martial artist because if you don't train at Jackson Winklejohn, you can always train at Greg Luttrell's camp. But still, though, when you get asked by, the casual person who don't really watch MMA or think it's too barbaric or, have a different mindset towards sports in general, what do you say to those people when you basically say to them that you are, in fact, a mixed martial artist or a fighter?
It's again this idea. I think it's sometimes the people's fault because they're closed-minded, but we live in a society that kind of makes them closed-minded and pays them to be closed-minded. They're going to be put into a category of being athletic or non-athletic. They're going to be put into a category of being creative or not creative. They're going to be put into a category of being intellectual or non-intellectual. And so when people are put in those camps by whether it's a system of are you productive or an educational system or just how we teach PE in schools, then you're going to have people think that, okay, that's the other and I'm over here and they thus can't be like me and I can't understand them. But someone who writes a book should be able to understand someone who wants to get a triangle choke, and someone who works on cars should understand someone that wants to get a head kick, because it's the same thing. It's human beings doing human things and pushing themselves to the limit of their creativity and endurance and their characters, and it's testing them. And we can see them reach their potentials or something closer to it rather than just be stuck in something that doesn't make them happy and doesn't help them prosper. And so I think martial arts can be that, but it also could be something barbaric and boring. But that's our choice. Same thing with science, same thing with art. All of it has that neutral starting set, and then we have to take it somewhere good or take it somewhere bad. And I want to show people I'm going to take it somewhere good. And I've always thought about that.
Hmm. Understood. Understood. That's a great way to close this whole thing out. And before we do close this whole thing out, you know, give the people the chance to know you. How the hell can they contact you, first of all?
Well, I'm Tenneson MMA. You can see right here. I even got it in Japanese on the bottom. My wife like captured my essence on this shirt. We're gonna start
Nice
printing out some
shirt, by the
more.
way. Nice shirt.
We got
Get it.
we got a Chinese one and we got a Japanese one, so we're doing pretty well.
Wow.
I'm
Nice shirt.
I'm
Where
Tennyson.
can we get it?
It's just message me on my Instagram, which is at Tennyson MMA. It's like spelt like the state of Tennessee, so it's TNNESON MMA. I'm
Okay.
also on Facebook and I'm on Twitter, rambling about things like I did today. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it, Jay Christian. I really appreciate it, Andrew Benjamin. I got
Before
my
you go
cat
though,
here. He's amazing too.
Aww.
I fight for him as well, and his name's Wicket, named after the Ewok in Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. The other one's a Siamese mix that's named Wampa, of course. The
that was Wicked. That was Warwick Davis, right? That was Warwick Davis's.
yes, this guy's amazing. Look at him; he's adorable. How could you not? How could
So
you
much
not love this
nicer than
cat?
your cat, Christian, who's always interrupting the show. Your cat's
But
always
Tennyson
interrupting the
MMA
show.
guys on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm there, and literally and Reddit even. Message me, say hello, what's up? I saw your interview. You talk too much, but I like you. Okay, right? But
But
I like
before you
Godzilla
go,
movies too and anime, and maybe I'll tell you what I want to come out dressed up as. Maybe it's
the
not a
last
top
thing,
secret.
the last thing also before you go, make your your too long didn't read of why you should fight in Rizin. Go ahead, sir.
The too long didn't read is that there's going to be violence and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to come with a whole bunch of positivity and some fun anime music.
Great.
That's
Great.
it. Violence and positivity.
Great. Exactly what we want to hear. And Jay Krish, you want to take us out?
Well, yes, of course. As you can plainly see, Tennyson is enjoying time with his cat. You can follow him on all forms of social media at Tennyson MMA. That's TENNESON MMA. As for us, you can follow me on Twitter at ChrisGary92. You can follow Andrew on Twitter at ABenja1. You can follow the show handle at We Are Rising Pod. That's WEARERIZINPOD, all in one word. And you can check out the video podcast. Hopefully, you're subscribed to this YouTube channel for more content. But you can also check us out on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Podcast, or all forms of podcast provider known to man. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter you can follow me on Instagram at ChristianGary92, and obviously you can follow Andrew on Instagram as well. Just ask him. But still, though, it's been fun talking to y'all, and we hope to join y'all on another edition of the We Are Rising podcast. Talk to y'all later. I wish I could get Lenny Hart out right now, but hey, she's busy.
Yeah, she's on break right now after two shows back to back. But yes, Andrew, thank you again once again for your time. You know what? Hopefully, we get to see you in Rizin one day.
Thank you guys so much. I want to represent the world and my gym and my family and my friends and my cat.
Good enough. Good enough.